still having a little bit of the tummy stuff, but it's not overwhelming like it was, Caitlin, a couple of days ago when I was just like, all right, help me out. I did back off on the salt, so I'm not doing as much, but I'm still having those moments. But it's like every time I see that, I wrote a post about this on Instagram today. Every time I see that, it's like, all right, I didn't need that junk in my body anyway, so it's just getting rid of it.
100%. And the other thing too is if you were fighting something off prior to starting this, your body's just being more efficient at clearing whatever was in there that is making your tummy a little bit more unsettled.
There it is. I had a pseudomoma develop, and I still have a little bit of the rash from the pseudomoma. Those of you that don't know what that is, it's like bacterial water that from like a pipe. I think my hot tub, I had the hose that filled up the hot tub had like sitting water, and bacteria grew in there, and then it went in the hot tub and it got inside my body, develops this nasty rash. I had a big old antibiotic put in my butt. But that's interesting. I didn't even think about that aspect of why and I've had a lot of gas too, and so it's probably just trying to deal with all that.
Yeah, that very well could be it. When I was just hearing you still talking about it, I was like, my goodness, it sounds like there's something else going on that your body is like fighting through and like finally clearing.
Yeah, this was one of the reasons I started this long fast, not just because I haven't done one in a while, but I had this pseudomoma and it wasn't really healing up as fast as I wanted it to. And I'm thinking, I know of no greater healing protocol, Lindsey, than just going on an all-out fast to see what would happen. So it's really fascinating.
Absolutely. When we take that interference out, the body is able to do what it does best, which is heal.
I see Dr. Nick is coming up to the stage. He always has really fascinating things to say. What you got, Nick?
Hey, I just wanted to talk about some of the gut stuff that you were bringing up.
Please, yes.
Tangential to it, because I work with a lot of people with IBS and IBDs, and something to note is that the ketone bodies that increase when you're on a fast, some of the things they do, they've been shown to be essential, not just good for, but essential for helping the stem cells in your gut lining renew. And there's also receptors on your gut lining for beta-hydroxybutyrate.
Yes.
So it binds to the same receptors that you hear about those short-chain fatty acids that get made when you eat, say, fiber, like butyrate. Beta-hydroxybutyrate binds to the same receptors like GPR109A, and that has a lot of beneficial effects. But it's actually very interesting. You think that not eating would make you poop less, but sometimes when I'm dealing with constipation clients, I find actually that is the hardest thing to deal with, harder than IBS, IBDs, constipation. But sometimes a fast helps them clear out.
Yes.
Because it improves gastrointestinal motility. So there's all these beneficial effects of the ketones on the gut, and also just the fast starving the pathogenic bacteria. The bacteria that are the bad bacteria are generally the most sugar loving. So when you're not having any carbohydrates because you're fasting, those are the ones that die off first. So I think there's a lot of beneficial effects on the gut from a fast, provided you break it well.
Yes.
I'm sure you have more wisdom on that for later.
Yeah, and we're going to address that a little bit today, but mostly day 6 and 7. But I want to ask you something else, because it seems to me that all of this breakdown of all this stuff coming out, like I didn't realize you could still have this numerous of bowel movements when you haven't had food. Like this is what freaks people out so much, and this is everybody on the panel, but I definitely want to ask Nick. Like my bowel movements increase with a fast, like you were just saying, like the constipation patients, you put them on a fast and suddenly they're going. It's what's the physical, what makes that happen?
Well, it could be two things that pop to mind. One, it could be you just have food to clear out, things that are just persisting because you have not optimal gastrointestinal motility. But another thing is to consider is, when you have a bowel movement, a large proportion of it, I think about 30%, is not from food you've eaten, but it's actually your microbiome. It's your gut bugs turning over. So you could be pooping out part of your gut ecosystem with other guts flourishing. Remember how I said there were pathogenic bacteria that die? Where do they go? They have to be pooped out.
Right. So
other bacteria might grow up and you poop out the bad bacteria.
And for me, Caitlin, and not to be graphic, guys, but this is real life. We want you to know what's going on in a fast, at least in my perspective. And Dax, I want to see if this happens to you as well. Like the need to go is more explosive, for lack of a better term, than a normal poop. So Dax, do you have kind of that kind of issue as well?
Well, I think my bowel movements are much more predictable during a fast.
Yes.
In other words, if I want to facilitate a bowel movement, I'll increase my salt
Yes.
quite a bit, and then increase my water as well. And I can pretty much with certainty predict within 10 minutes of when I'll need to go. It's your body's efficiency is at a much higher level when you're fasting, particularly when you get past the initial phase of the fast.
Yeah. Yeah. And at this point in the fast, Caitlin, it's little like bulk. It's more like Dippin' Dot size. I'm trying to be delicate about this, but that's kind of what it looks like.
Yeah, so what it sounds like, just like what Dr. Nick was alluding to, is your body is like, sweet, we can finally clear all of this stagnant, like fecal matter out, and it, because it's been sitting in there in a long time, what ends up happening is it becomes essentially dehydrated. That's what constipation really is. All the moisture, all the liquid is pulled out of it, and so your body is finally able to release it. So, albeit probably not the most comfortable thing, it's definitely a good thing overall for your overall health and well-being.
Oh, but it's disgusting coming out the way it does, because it is, when I gotta go, it's like, go, or I'm gonna have problems.
Well, and I do think the fact that this is lingering for as long as it is, that you are fighting off still an underlying infection.
But outside, thank you for that. That explains it, because I've never experienced this on a long fast before. So that makes, it's got to be that pseudomoma I'm dealing with. But yeah, it's fascinating though. Like each fast is like its own fingerprint. Like people think, oh, I've done fasting before. It'll be exactly the same as the last time, good, bad, or ugly. And it's never the same. Like Lindsey, do you see that when you do different kinds of fasts and you go on another fast again, you're like, I've been here before, but then something goes, this one's different.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, our body is not static. It's always changing. And so we deal with, each fast is unique unto its own. And that could be from our emotional state. That can be from physiological state. That could be, like Dr. Caitlin mentioned, we could be fighting off a pathogenic, challenge that we didn't know that we had. And so absolutely. And those bowel movements, sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. It varies.
Yes. So guys, if you just joined us, we are in day number 5 of my 7-day water fasting challenge. I've been joined on the stage by Dax, Lindsey, Dr. Caitlin, and today Dr. Nick popped up. Thank you all for being here today. Stay as long or as short as you need to, but we really appreciate your expertise here. My name's Jimmy Moore. I'm the international best-selling author of The Complete Guide to Fasting. I wrote that with Dr. Fung just about 5 years ago. And so we all up on stage have done longer fasts many times, and we would love to help you out. So raise your hand if you want to come up on the main stage. We're going to talk about some of the challenges here today in day 5. I know my friend Brian down in the audience wanted to ask about breaking the fast because he's going to have to break his tomorrow. But we will be talking about that tomorrow and Sunday. So we could touch on it if it does come up here today. Definitely want to hear from you guys. So pop on up. We'll get you up on the stage. And we really appreciate you being here today. So, Dax, how are you doing with the fast?
I am absolutely feeling amazing. I wanted to mention a few things that I've noticed just specifically yesterday and today. My visual clarity is better than it's been in some time. My hearing is much better.
I'm sorry, what? I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, thanks. But every sense, all the 5 senses are operating better than they have in quite some time. And my skin my skin is really soft.
Yes.
I tend to the soles of my feet tend to get dry, and the soles of my feet are as supple as when I was a young kid right now. So I'm telling you, when you get into the latter part of the fast, you start to see some of the manifestations of the fast, and they're really quite remarkable.
And that makes sense, doesn't it, Dr. Nick? Because you're turning over the cells. Autophagy at this point is like as heavy as it could possibly be. You're kind of renewing your body, right, Dr. Nick?
Yep.
Short and sweet. So yeah, and you mentioned something about the brain health stuff, Dax. I think that's fascinating because I was in an interview this morning and talking to the lady, and we were talking about fasting, and she was like, what's it feel like in day 5 of a fast? And I said, really? I feel like I'm floating, but I feel like I have this kind of superhuman kind of thinking, and how the brain is just so clear, lucid. It's just, you can't describe it unless you do it, Lindsey.
Well, I want to just add to that because we were talking about that before a couple days ago. And do you remember we were talking about a little bit about anxiety in the amygdala?
Yes.
I mentioned a Matson paper. So what they were showing us is you adapt to a fast, the anxiety aspect goes down. But that was actually a paper looking at Alzheimer's disease model, and it showed it protected against features of Alzheimer's. So not just the short-term benefits of having the elevated brain energy, but the long-term benefits of
so
the autophagy you were just talking about and other benefits from the neurological aspect.
Okay, so the autophagy is part of the benefits. Obviously, the ketones flooding the brain, which is kind of a preferred fuel source for the brain. I mean, there's so many mechanisms as to why that would happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually, if people talk about the ketones as an amazing fuel source for the brain, and I'd say that's 30% of the story. Because the other face of ketones is their unbelievable signaling molecules. They have receptors not only on cells, but in cells. In fact, a paper just came out in Science Advances last week, and it was, which is a really good journal, and it was building on the mechanism by which ketones modulate metabolism. So there are these things called post-translational modifications, and they're basically adding on or removing things from proteins in your cells, including the proteins around which your DNA is wrapped, to change their function. And what this paper showed, it explained the mechanism by which 1,397 different proteins are modulated by the attachment or removal of the ketone body, beta-hydroxybutyrate. So the beta-hydroxybutyrate actually gets put on by this enzyme P300 onto different proteins, including DNA-related proteins, to change gene expression, change cell metabolism, just across the cell. They could identify almost 1,400 different proteins. So much more than just a fuel itself.
Yes.
It's a regulator of metabolism.
Thank you for being here today. That's fascinating. And if you can't understand and you're listening in the audience, you go, I don't know anything of what he just said, just stick around, because this is something that you'll build upon your knowledge. The more you hear similar terminology, I didn't write Keto Clarity just out of the top of my head or any of the books I've written without doing a lot of this kind of listening, like to people like Nick and Caitlin, and trying to learn from their expertise. And so it'll come. Don't let it overwhelm you if you're like, I have no idea what he just said. All right, guys, so I'm going to open it up to you again. Raise your hand if you want to come up on stage. We'll go to Jess here in a second, but definitely raise the hand. Click on that little hand insignia down there. We'll bring you up on the stage. But I did want to come over to Jimmy on Clubhouse Instagram page. Thank you guys for being here. Norma says, 118 hours in. This has been so different than any other fast I've ever done. I haven't felt this good, or I haven't felt good the whole time. Nothing serious to make me want to stop. It's just weird to me. I am hungry today so bad and not thirsty at all. Caitlin, any comments for Norma?
Yeah, so every fast is going to be different, and every fast is going to essentially show us different layers, because healing really is like peeling layers of an onion back, and every layer we pull back, like every fast we do, we're exposing a new layer. And so I've been there where, I've done a dozen different fasts, and then the 13th fast I do, I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like absolute crap.
Yes.
What's going on?